Hello, my name's Bont, Richard Bont, and this is Curmudgeonly Yours, a show on Society Bites Radio, part of the Radio Ear Network family, supplying social interaction for the mind and soul. The introductory and concluding music to this show is La Polonaise by Wieniawski, played by Max Bont. I am your host and curmudgeon, where everything is what it seems. Nothing is what it seems. And what is not said is often of most interest. Today on Curmudgeonly Yours, I'll be reading selected passages from my new novel, Curmudgeon on the Loose, which I will publish in early January 2021 on Amazon's Kindle. If you read the novel Curmudgeonly Yours, published in 2017, Labette the curmudgeon and main character was not fond of many things. Labette's view was that, and I am quoting from the back cover, people are not all good and do not have equal rights, despite all the clamoring to the contrary. They're mean, selfish, hypocritical, needy, and racist. They are generally unhelpful. Curmudgeonly Yours takes a dim view of human beings everywhere, but it especially needles people and their habits in Italy, France, the Middle East, and the USA. Nevertheless, Curmudgeonly Yours is a very funny book in a black sense. It is impossible to put down. Curmudgeonly Yours, the novel, was set in France, Italy, and the USA. Curmudgeon on the Loose, and subtitled as Tales from the Western World, takes place primarily in the USA and France. Both books by Richard Bont are available on Amazon's Kindle and on richardbont.com. What is a curmudgeon? Somebody who is irritable or stubborn, a bad-tempered or surly person? Curmudgeons are people with stubborn ideas or opinions, all of these things, as according to Wikipedia and Webster's Dictionary. And as the Frenchman Jean-Paul Sartre said it, l'enfer c'est les autres, hell is other people. Chapter 1, Ad Nauseam. I shivered in the morning air conditioning as I stared down at the toilet and relieved myself. I looked at my hands, still trembling from my vivid dream and my near encounter with Big Dick, the German. No, my hands had not been truncated, and Big Dick was probably still waving that meat cleaver around in the back of my mind somewhere. I was not completely awake because I could still envision Marge, Big Dick's dutiful mother, making cakes and trying to please her patrons. And as I shook myself dry and buttoned up my pajamas, I finally realized that the images, sounds, and smiles and smells of the night were no longer reality, and that I would have to face a sunny new Saturday morning. But first it was time to wash my hands in this brave new corona world. Before it was just a quick rinse, a little soap, and a half dry. Half on the towel, the other half on my pajamas. Now it was 20 seconds of hot water scrubbing with a nail brush, including the nails, fingers, back of my hands, and Sally Palm herself. Then a vigorous towel dry, all just from touching my dick. Where was Corona? Holding onto the banister with my left hand, I quickly skipped down to the kitchen to get something to eat. In a quick series of movements, I hit the 30-year-old Sony radio / small TV combo, filled the electric kettle full of water, brought out yogurt and prunes, a bowl for cereal, a black tea bag, some porridge and raisin bran, as well as the almond and regular milk. The fascist left National Public Radio station I listened to every morning because, and only because, its commercials were less annoying than those of the for-profit stations, was droning on about Trump and how bad he was managing the coronavirus problem. It seemed like every day they had something lousy to say about the guy. They weren't like the national press, which was openly hostile. Rather, they conducted interviews with leftist journalists who spouted their own anti-Trump venom, all the while maintaining that the views expressed on their networks were not the radio producer's responsibility. Then whose responsibility was it? Before he became president, Trump employed thousands of people, contributed greatly to the economy, took a lot of deductions, and paid little tax. Like goats, the leftist press regularly bleated, "Bad, bad," when referring to Trump. The press seemed to forget Trump was now serving the American people and working for free. But this was not enough for the radical left. Imagine if this president had even pocketed his salary of $400,000 a year, what the liberals would have said. As it was, they screamed epithets such as emoluments, didn't pay your taxes, every time he opened his mouth. Some guy even talked about how expensive Trump's golf habits were. They never had the same concern for Clinton's, and especially Obama's golf habits, and never mentioned how Trump worked a lot, slept little, and was often on the job during holidays and weekends when they, his critics, were playing golf. Normally, I would read the newspapers on my phone over breakfast. However, this particular morning, there was a big tennis tournament I was going to catch live on regular TV. When NPR started droning on about their pledge drive and how listeners like me were the lifeblood of their station, I shut it off. I was annoyed to know that I was contributing $100 a year to a supposedly non-commercial station that could only come up with anti-Trump machinations. I hit the remote and the tennis channel came on. I caught the end of one point and saw the players walk to their seats to towel off. Then I heard background music that would signal the arrival of yet another commercial. Another one. I quickly hit the previous channel button. But the previous channel was also one huge festering advertisement. I could never get away from commercials. In a tennis match, there were normally 2 minutes of ads every 2 games when players changed sides. What the transmitting sports network liked were short games, so they could put up lots of commercials, just like they did during the stop-start action of horrible American football. The more stops there were, the more commercials they ran, the more money they made, and what was wrong with that? What was wrong with that was one's quality of life would disappear as Bozo sang out, "Oh, fantastic," or something like that to a popular tune from the 1980s. The music stopped and the crummy actors slash singers slash media whores ceased singing oh, and another commercial about pillows and sheets came on. It was my pillow time. A guy by the name of Mike Lindell emerged, wearing a blue shirt and badly dyed brown hair, and swearing by the quality of his sheets, made with cotton picked in the region of Giza, somewhere in the area of Egypt and the Mediterranean. Who gives a damn where the cotton's from, Mike? Mr. Lindell wore a gold cross around his neck and was apparently a recovering alcoholic and drug abuser whose new drug was abusing us with his pillows and Giza cotton sheets, as well as with his Rags to Riches autobiography that he had written and narrated. Rags to Riches was one of the most popular myths in American folklore. No one seemed to give a damn about what normally happens to people, rags to dirty rags. Only realist writers Emile Zola and Frank Norris seemed to care about that, but realism died out 120 years ago. Of course, there was the riches to rags story that the Schadenfreude crowd liked. Personally, I like stories of riches to even more riches, a bit like Trump's story, but even he has been the victim of society's obsession with Schadenfreude. Look how much of his father's money he squandered, the envious American left whined. When yet another 30-second commercial blasted out, I reached for the remote again. A big, bald man dressed in red was bellowing, punching the air and catching a football as manly Ram trucks and four-wheel drive vehicles filled the screen. Finally, a cute blonde dressed in red with large perky breasts appeared and chirped about getting it at Firkins. Getting what? However, I had stopped listening. I found myself raging about how I was paying $170 a month for all these stations and had to put up with 50% commercials and 50% content for every hour of airtime. I muted the commercial. Then I fiddled with my iPhone so I could read an article in the Montreal Gazette, but this was tricky to do with all the online ads. If I scrolled up to reread a paragraph, the previous ad would pop up, and I would have to be very careful not to trigger another ad. And so it went from one article to the next over several different newspapers. Reading and dodging ads that all use the same principle. Charge a lot per month for a subscription and load each article full of ads ready to overtake your screen if your fingers mistyped and or clicked on the wrong spot. I turned the sound back on. This particular tennis match had now been going back and forth for 5 minutes with lots of juices and advantages, and I thought with glee how annoyed the sponsors were going to be when they couldn't slip in their god-awful, slimy, ridiculous commercials. Except that, as I was thinking this, a horrible ad descended on the screen and completely obscured a point from the match. I hit the previous channel button one more time. Lo and behold, a commercial for hemorrhoids. I hit another channel. A paid actress was going off about her bowels and the serendipity of regularity. Then I hit another, and a family of 4 was eating brunch. The message was, eating healthy meant being regular. There was that wording, regular again. Was I going to become regular? I looked at what I had prepared for breakfast. Yogurt, prunes, coffee, and raisin bran. Uh-oh, somebody was trying to tell me something. I was afraid of what might happen if I drank too much coffee. I looked outside the window and saw a few dozen people wearing masks. I closed the blinds. There was danger out there. Better stay in, become regular. This is from Chapter 3, Hawaiian Joe. A marketing guru once told me that a real salesman, or salesperson in today's politically correct parlance, a top-of-the-line salesperson that every company wanted, was the gal or guy who would get you to say yes to something you never even considered, needed, or wanted. The key was to bludgeon through and get to yes. I made a habit of getting screwed regularly by these bastards throughout my life. One incident comes to mind. In retrospect, I thought I was being clever because I was finally going to put one over on a tour company called Paradise Bahamian Tours that organized, quote, free trips to the Bahamas for 1 week, including, get this, free transport from Miami to and from the island of Freeport in the Bahamas. Yes, I was going to actually get something for free. And all I would have to do was jump through a few sales hoops. The key was to jump lively and be patient, be as equally tough and resistant as these marketers were in sales. There was a lot at stake, free alcohol and free food for the week. It was obviously going to be a pretty good deal for the four of us. Except there was a catch, and a backstory, and a seminar we would be forced to attend. The backstory goes like this. My wife and I had once lived in Southern California and had bought a timeshare with a MasterCard. In fact, we had been stupid and had to get out of it in the best way we could. Fortunately, the law had allowed us 3 days to undo the damage, and I was able to get the timeshare people to recredit my MasterCard. Flash forward 25 years to Florida. Salespeople had gotten better, whereas we had just gotten older. The seminar was set for 10 a.m. on a Sunday morning, but one had to arrive at 8:30 if one wanted the free trip. Naturally, there was free coffee and donuts, as well as many obese people. And the sales pitch for buying into travel packages started right away. Well-dressed salespeople with thin lips and sharp, shiny teeth worked the crowd that we were. Large-breasted, attractive women flocked around people like me. Good-looking men with bouffant hairstyles and shaved sides of heads and sleek beards and built-up bodies glad-handled people like my wife, a petite Latina type. Suddenly, the Gary Good-lookings and Barbie Boobs-a-lot had disappeared and the supervisors showed up. These managers seemed to be a few years older and their fangs sharper. They were less attractive than their underling spies, but more knowledgeable and much more unscrupulous. "Labette, how are you?" came a question out of nowhere from a 40-something matron with too much makeup and a small, nasty mouth. "Oh, hello," I answered. "How did you know We're about to sit down now and watch a video. You and your wife need to have a seat, please." The words were polite, but the tone was not. She immediately swarmed all over my Latina wife. "And you must be Flavia," the matron said. "My name's Nancy." "Nancy what?" I asked rudely. "Oh, we don't do last names here," she said, fake scolding me. "Shame on you." She wagged her finger at me with a smile and a sexy wink, which I found odd since she was barely old enough to be my daughter. The video lasted 30 minutes, far too long, I thought, for an enforced sales sit-down. There was no time for a bathroom break, as handlers ushered us into family groups around tables separated from each other by 6 feet. Nancy and her cohorts all started off the same way. "How often do you take vacations? Where do you go? Why do you go there?" All these WH questions came flying out their mouths. How, when, where, why, what, etc. It was like the Spanish Inquisition. Yes, they had us all pegged, with tight-looking women playing up to the men as well as the men playing up to the women. "You got to keep yourself healthy first," the 43-year-old Nancy was lecturing, "because if you're not healthy, how do you expect your family to fare?" And so on, and blah, blah, and blah. Flavia and I were sitting next to each other and would occasionally give each other nudges under the table to remind ourselves we weren't going to kowtow to this nonsense and buy any vacation plans that would take us anywhere we wanted in the world for a week, 2 week stay. All we had to do was book the week before, because otherwise things could get booked up. And you didn't want that to happen, did you? For Christ's sake, another hour had gone by and we still weren't cleared for our free vacation. It was